Hi, everybody. Dave Walker again with the Beat of SMB Institute, and I am joined today. I'm excited to be joined today by the CMO of Active Campaign, Maria Pergolino. Hi, Maria.
Hi, so guys, great to talk to you.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Thanks for doing this as we lead into the weekend. So, why don't you give everybody kind of the 411 on your career, and because you've done some pretty interesting things, and I'd love you to talk about it.
That's really nice of you to say, Dave. So I'm, as Dave mentioned, Maria Pergolino. I am the CMO at Active Campaign, which I joined about 8 months ago. It has brought me to beautiful Chicago, which is interesting because I originally am from the East Coast, and I am a long marketer. I did my grad and undergrad in marketing. I love marketing. I think I always say it's the front of the ship. It's the strategy of the company. And I started in industries like insurance and chemicals, but then found a love for technology, and it moved me over to the West Coast in Silicon Valley. And there, I have helped companies once they have product fit, once they know what they're selling, scale up to that large organization. And I did so for three different brands so far: Marketo, which I was there until the IPO; Actis, which I was there through a $1.5 billion acquisition; and then at Anaplan, where I brought them through their IPO about almost 2 years ago. And now trying to do this. Active Campaign is an amazing company. This year had a big announcement around a $100 million funding round. But what's very cool about the company, they are already 100 million in ARR. So that means that, like, we didn't take more out of the bank than we're making, which is a little bit rare for companies, if that makes sense. But more special to the company is we just crossed 100,000 customers, all SMB. And so really excited to be here with some SMB firms today.
That's great. And give us a little background on your founder, Jason, and how he kind of came to this idea of creating a marketing stack basically for small business.
Yeah, if anybody ever gets the chance to, on this call, meet Jason or talk to Jason, he is one of the lowest ego, smartest men ever, very, very inspirational, and started, like many companies, trying to, recognizing a problem. He was in college, and actually even before that, in high school, the internet was emerging. He started doing some internet consulting. He was learning at home, like on his PC, and realized he could help other organizations. He started a small consultancy and realized that he couldn't scale with that consultancy. So he built a small software solution that was on premise, meaning that it wasn't hosted in the internet. It's something you would have downloaded onto your computer. And it did really well, and he loved it. And then he built another tool like that and another tool like that. And next thing you knew, he had a portfolio of products that were helping small businesses do some pretty big things. And they were all tools to help smaller business do what enterprise organizations had access to, which is marketing automation and CRM. He realized, though, that those small businesses didn't want to stay on their desktop. They wanted to move into the cloud. And so a few years ago, he rebuilt the solution to what Active Campaign is today. When he did that, and I think the really amazing part is he said, I'm not going to build what I had on premise or what all these other brands have. I'm going to build something that any company of any size can use. Realizing that he didn't want a tool that was just watered down for smaller businesses. He wanted to build something robust, but put the product on the line for delivering something that, even though it had the complexity, all of the features, was elegant enough that all companies of all sizes could use it. And instead of being stuck in, here's a marketing tool and a sales tool, said, no, smaller businesses want to have a way to talk to their customers, and they don't want to think of it as marketing or sales. They want to have something that's focused on customer experience. And that's what brings us here to where we are with Active Campaign today.
That's a great backstory. Thank you. And I agree. Everybody should meet Jason and follow him because he is reminds me of Evan Goldberg from NetSuite and Clayton Mask from Infusionsoft. Entrepreneurs who serve small business because they were small business at one point. And that just, don't you think that just like makes for a completely different philosophy?
Yeah, it is. It puts a lot of the right pressure on an organization. Every dollar that we spend in marketing is one that could have been spent on making a better product for the customer. And so it really makes for a different perspective. It's not growth for the sake of growth, but is it really serving who the customer is? And if we were to compare a competitor of ours to like HubSpot, to ActiveCampaign, when they were at this size, you would see we're having similar growth, but doing so at a significantly less cost. And that is because the emphasis is on how do we make a great product instead of how do we just sell something and we'll catch up with the product later. And I think that that is what actually, like, I don't think you can get away with a different path these days because so much happens through advocacy. And if you try to do that, if you try to market something but then don't deliver, the days of that are gone, right? Because people are going to tell each other. We talk to our customers and say, like, you can't, like, it's okay is not good anymore. You can't have a 3.5 or even a 4-star rating on your tool or on your product or whatever it is that you sell, because people go now. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a bait shop or a consulting firm or an e-commerce store. People go and they find the top 10, they sort by the best review, and then they take that top one. And so if you're not in the top, it's hard for your business.
So there's an astounding statistics that 65% of small businesses make their purchase decisions final before they even reach out for the first time to whoever the product or service provider is. It's amazing.
That's absolutely correct. And we see it in our own business. We offer a free trial to get people started. And then even before a rep can call them, they're often deciding, hey, I'm going to buy this. And they buy right online, even before we've talked to them, despite having a sales team, right? The companies do their research and they want to find an unbiased opinion. They know the salesperson's going to say it's great. So it's a hassle to them, not a help to them.
So the reason why I was so excited to talk to you, because you articulated something that I think that many of us have felt, and that is that we need to do things that we should have been doing all along. And I want to ground it really and by that, marketers should be doing things that we should have been doing all along. And I know you didn't mean that as an admonishment or kind of a finger wag or anything like that. It's really more than anything a self-admission. But tell me where you were and what you were thinking and feeling when you realized, oh, wow, this is really going to be bad. This is a crisis.
Yeah, and I've had a couple of those realizations, right? We had a day where our website didn't perform the way we wanted to, and I thought that was going to be the worst of things in very early March. And then there is a pandemic happening, and there was a moment that I realized that I would be somebody that I would say has been very committed to DEI, diversity and inclusion. And there was a moment this year when I realized I was not doing good enough. And then there's things that with the economy and where you recognize, wait a second, this is not just a pandemic. The economy is having a major shift, and maybe that's causing me pause. So there's a lot of times that I could answer that question this year, but I think you're referring to the pandemic, and we, you see the numbers growing, and it really started with the team. Is it safe to bring them into work here? And I remember one day saying, hey, there's some tech companies are being progressive here. Maybe we should join them, to going, wait a second, this isn't about being progressive. We need to do this now. We want to make sure that everyone is safe, and how do we make sure that we're doing that for our workforce? For us, it was even beyond our employees, because we host conferences throughout the world, and we didn't want to put our customers at risk, and so we had to start thinking about those really quickly too, and that was all in early March.
So what I want to do is kind of just unpack this notion of what are the things that we should have been doing all along. You take it in whatever order you want, because I know that you're an expansive thinker and you've thought about this from a number of different dimensions. So take us on the journey of what we should have been doing all along.
So I think one of the most critical things for I think any organization is prioritization. It is you just never have enough time. I always say to my team members, like, if you would work 24 hours a day, the company would let you, right? You have to prioritize. You have to find the high value, and that happens whether you're an employee in a company. But I think people are acutely aware if they own a small business, right? You put on one day, you put on your manufacturing hat, and the next day you put on your marketing hat, and the next day your sales hat, and you have to be ruthless with that. And I think sometimes we think we're very good at that. And I thought that I was somebody great at prioritization, but what the pandemic caused for us was we had to stop our events. And this is one example I think one of my team members shared with you. So we did 170, I think, last year, I think it may have been more than that, in-person events with our customers around the world. Actually, I think the number is close to 300. We have customers in 170 countries, which is where I got confused there. And so we host these events across the world, and they had to stop. And so we said, wait a second, what do we want to do for them if they're not going to be in person? And we started to create a digital program. And I think, like many companies having to think about going more digital, we said, okay, well, we'll just take what we did on in person and we'll move it online. And it became very obvious very quickly that nobody wants to sit for a full day like they did in person. Like, what would you do at the lunch break? And so we paused and we said, okay, let's take that whole team. We had 3 people that were working because they were going and delivering these events, and some of our content marketers. And we said, let's go, and what would the experience people want to have online? And let's redo this, and let's make this something that really provides value for our customers. And so we halted for well over a month before delivering what we can now call our digital study hall. But once we delivered it, it hit me that had I done my job the way I should have been doing, we would have done that pause anyway, because the value that we could only get to so many cities, but now we can deliver something to our customers all over the world at any time. And so it was this I thought I was good at prioritizing, but the reality was, if I would have done the same thing that the pandemic caused for us, stop these events, put together this digital program, got it live, and then moved back to the events. And so it has caused me to really rethink everything and say, and I know, Dave, you being a previous CMO, you think about opportunity costs and really thinking about what are the opportunity costs? What am I giving up? If I spend a minute or a year or whatever that time is on X, what else can I not do? And trying to be very unbounding with that thought so that I can find some pockets of opportunity.
I can't tell you how many of executives, your peers that are listening to this, how many of them have told me that story of the pause, that kind of moment of reflection, that kind of rocking back and realizing, whether you're Todd Wilkins at ShipStation or whether you're Brock Blake at Lendio, so many of them told me this story of just going, whew, okay, wait a minute, stop. Let's just go back and look at what means the most, what's meaningful. And I really applaud you. I mean, I think that is an essential ingredient for success right now, right? Is just stepping back and thinking.
Yeah, I think that you have to watch that, because you can't stop everything, right? And so there's things so I think about where can you apply this, that it makes the most sense? Where do you make the shifts? What do you keep going? And one of the things that I always try to think about is what you want to be innovative in is what you are selling or how you are delivering that to the customers. You don't have to be innovative. There's best practices you can follow. Put the best practices in. So let's say you're selling a product through e-commerce. Get creative in what you're selling or how you're selling it, but you don't have to come up with new ways to do your financials in the back end, or come up with new ways to maybe build a website, right? So really focus your innovation on the areas that's going to make a difference for your customers. In this case, it was how we deliver education to them so they can learn the solution, as opposed to trying to rethink maybe how I would do my budgeting and marketing, because that's not going to create more value. So really trying to put that prioritization or innovation in the places where it's going to make the difference, not just doing it in everything. Because if you pause everything, then your business has a different problem.
Right, right. No, I think that is a good perspective. So so you have this aha, kind of grounded in the change you need to make with the live events. Did other things kind of flow in behind it that, hey, while we're at it, we need to do this too?
Yeah, and I mentioned diversity and inclusion, and I think that another great pause. I'm a woman in business. I advocate for female leadership. There's a lot that I have contributed to that area, but I did the same with our hiring and with what positions we were going to have and what roles and what that scale that we're trying to build could look like, and how could I reformat or change some of those opportunities so that we could be more inclusive and we could create more diversity. It's not just trying to add, because of a movement, people of color, but what is our interview cycles like? Are we truly being inclusive, right? Just adding somebody of color to our team doesn't really change if we're truly being an inclusive company. How can I create a more collaborative environment for the whole team? How can we did an exercise I really like. I don't know if anybody else has done it here, Tilt 365, which is a small, you go through and you do a quiz, and it's value-based. And so how do we say, are we building a team that has a lot of diversity and values, and are we tilting towards other people and respecting those values that may be different from ours? And I think that inclusion in all parts of the business helps then allow that diversity. And so trying to put some pause and think about how we can do that better. And now I think similarly, we have to recognize as businesses, the economy is changing. There are outside forces that are going to impact our businesses. For some of our businesses, it's not going to matter what we do. We're going to have to pivot in some way. Because the external factors are going to change, right? People's livelihoods are going to change. People are moving to different places now because of work from home, work every day, because of this digital transformation becoming a more global, where the globe is getting smaller, right? We have connections now all over the world. Because everybody's becoming more digital. And so, how are those things going to impact our business, and what do we have to pivot to make that change? And the way I like to think about it is, where do I want to be? You and I talked about where do you want to go with B2B SMB? Where do we want to go to our business, and what's it really going to take to be there? And how do you create some milestones so that you don't just keep pushing off the big things, right? And we saw this with a lot of our customers. They had to, when COVID hit, restaurants or consulting firms that operated face-to-face had to find a way to become digital. And so they were pushed towards it. How do you say, what are all the things that could happen, and make it that you're on the path to that, so you don't have to scramble, so that your business can be more viable in the long run? And I would pose that not just to larger companies, but for smaller businesses as well.
Yeah, and let's dig a little on that, because do you think that your business increased when the crisis hit because there were so many businesses who were coming out of the woodwork and saying, like, I've got to get help. I've got to get a platform that's going to assist me in doing these things that I've been putting off, that I've been kind of saying, I should have been doing this all along, but I haven't. So now I got to start it. Do you see small businesses really recognizing what their digital experience, their consumer-facing digital experience needs to be? Are they figuring it out?
Yeah, one of the things, so for our current customers, one of the things we saw is them adding, and I haven't gone into detail here, but we saw what we call a customer experience automation platform. But it's what you would think about when you think about marketing automation and CRM, those solutions. And so what we do is we hold all the contacts a company would have, and we help them communicate with those companies through automation. And we help, so it helps their marketing, it helps them stay in touch, it helps them build relationships with their customers. And what we saw happen very quickly is current customers that we had expanding their database. So what that means is they had all these customers that they had their contact information. Maybe it was in with sign-in book at the front, or maybe it was in an Excel sheet, but they realized, wait a second, I want to start talking to them, and I'm not going to see them on Tuesday at the front door. So let me bring them in. So we saw this expansion happen with our contacts. And so it pushed companies to say, let me even understand who my customers are. So I think that's a first step. You really have to know your customers, and you have to organize them in a way that you can communicate with them. We then saw this expansion with how they started using our tools. So maybe they don't want to, everybody's starting to get overwhelmed with email. Let me try sending them some text messages. Let's start engaging with them in a community. Let me talk to them online through a conversation product, a pop-up that they can have a conversation right on my website. And so you saw this expansion of, wait a second, digital does not just mean email. My customers are in lots of places. Actually, they're now on their phone more. They're on the go. How do I talk to them there? And then we saw a lot of companies say, hey, that maybe weren't online, start moving to online. So this can mean lots of different things to companies. If you feel like you're digital and, hey, I've got it because I have an email list, there's probably more questions to ask. Well, when a situation happens and everybody's racing towards email, do you have other ways to talk to them so that it's not just email, because you might get caught up in the noise? And then once you feel like you have those channels established, I think we all know it has to be value-based. You have to be delivering something that makes people want to respond. The one tip I can give there that really worked for us, a lot of companies said, I got to provide value. We're in the middle of a crisis. Let me start giving tips. I'll give tips on how to work from home. I'll give tips about how to deal with COVID-19. And the one thing I would say is keep it to your expertise. Like if ActiveCampaign never went and said, here's your tips to work from home, because we're not experts in that. What we're experts in is helping you keep your business going. And so we put our tips that way. And so if you're trying to think about content, please make sure it's aligned to what your business drives, because we saw a lot of companies start creating best practices. So they had content, but people were confused about how then it was relevant to the business. And it just ended up taking up those businesses' time instead of helping continue their success.
And talk about something we should have been doing all along. I mean, I think, we probably both observed when a bank creates a small business support center that starts to give marketing advice, thank you, no. I mean, I don't need your marketing advice as my bank. I need you to be my bank and tell me how to manage my money.
And how do you continue to pay paychecks during a time of a crisis, right? So it's every company has value that they can give, and really bringing that value forward instead of trying to be something you're not, I think is really important during this time.
I remember having this conversation a while back with Jason about, pushing and pulling your offering to small businesses, especially. And I just want you to talk a little bit about kind of as the marketer, are you leaning forward into offering, if not insisting on small businesses embracing certain things, or are you leaning back and saying, no, let's just let them figure it out with the tools that we make available?
Dave, you had shared a stat with me. I think everybody here would appreciate it, just around I may not even have that opportunity to, because people may find it on their own. What were some of the stats that you knew that around people making the decision before they even talk to the company?
Yeah, I mean, the number that I've heard is 65% of small business decision makers are done the first visit to your site. And because they're collecting everything from the G2 crowds and the Alignables and the business.coms, which are all great. I mean, I think they're wonderful partners for all of us. But the small business in particular is, because I don't trust all of you, first of all, let me make my own decision before you start talking to me, because I'm worried you're going to confuse me even more.
Yeah, so I mean, with that, and I think you're right, it doesn't matter how much I push. Some people, even if they hear me, they're going to still make their decision about my tool or maybe a competitor's tool, without talking to me. So just having that good information about your brand, and I'm celebrated often for being a strong demand marketer, being able to do that acquisition. But the key to that is just having a very clear message and knowing what your value is. One of the first things that I realized is you keep mentioning Jason, we are fanatical about driving value. But we never tell anybody that. Like, there are some amazing things that this company has not raised prices on a current customer because we don't want to put extra. Jason just fundamentally believes he does not want to put extra burden on a company, especially like at a time now, right, where we might want to make more, but other people don't have it. So what we did as a marketing team, instead of creating some program separate, we delivered what we call our customer value commitment, or customer success commitment. And so we took all these things that were special about our organization, we put it in writing and said, hey, we won't raise your price, and we're going to give you free training, and we're going to make this usable. We're going to make sure that your data is safe, and we're going to give you free migration, free implementation, things that the company did. Instead of going and creating a new company or all new marketing that wasn't to our company, we took all the special things about our company and got it documented and put that out there. And I think that made, I think I went on a tangent there, but that really made was the right approach in that marketing, as opposed to kind of creating something that was not, true to us. And so as people were going out and searching for things on their own, they see a company that's, hey, we're going to stand by our commitments and we're going to put it in writing. And I think that makes the difference. And you mentioned those sites like G2, your customers start talking about that, and then that's out there. I totally believe that it does not matter. You can, we all go when there's when we're going to order, let's say, food online, and we go and we look at the ones with the high stars. And if you think that just happens with like food purchases or items on Amazon, that's just not true. No matter what business you're in, people are finding reviews and ratings, and they're only calling you if yours are great. So you really have to pay attention there. And the problem is, like we mentioned G2, you can't fake that. We have thousands of reviews on there. There would be no way for us to manipulate that. They put so many things into, and so maybe on a couple of sites you can find ways to like get your best customers to do a couple of things, but the customers are savvy about that. They know when it's something fake. You really just have to deliver in a great way, because that advocacy is either going to be the foundation and success of your company or the failing of it.
So how do you foster amongst your team this willingness to be, if not eagerness, to be reflective and say, gee, what are the things that I should have been doing all along, or we as a team should have been doing all along? Do you talk about it?
Yeah, if I'm correct, the reason that story is because one of my team members was able to tell you that story when I wasn't in the room.
Right.
And so I think some of that is, just being vulnerable and sharing. And I shared that story with my team, and it apparently made an impact because she shared that story with you. Your team and your customers, they're watching. And so you have to do it by example. And I create lots of examples of things because I am very far from perfect. And as I'm learning, I try to share that. And I think that can be done through lots of ways, whether you, and ways that help your business, like go apply for some awards, share what you're doing, speak on topics like on webinars like this. People want to hear from businesses of all sizes. I have so many questions about how restaurants are making it through, and so be open. If your company has a story, reach out to your local press, tell them about what you're doing. I think you really have the opportunity by just being open and sharing and a little bit vulnerable right now. I think using it to really help your company grow. People want to help in this situation, but we're feeling very paralyzed. I don't know how to help sometimes, especially the small businesses in my community. So if they tell me, I'm right there to support them. So, find a way to give yourself a voice, and feel free to, I think, encourage to be vulnerable through some of that. Share what's working and not working, even if you're admitting that sometimes you were wrong.
Yeah, listen, such an important lesson, right? Is this the ability to be humble to all of this? And if nothing else, the last 4 months have been very humbling from so many different dimensions. So there's a number of CMOs and VPs of marketing and directors of marketing that are going to be listening in on this, who are day in, day out selling to small business, marketing to small business. what are the things that, if you could summarize, you don't have to be terribly succinct, but just summarize, what are some of the big three, four actions that you would recommend that marketers do to really, frankly, do what should have been doing, they should have been doing all along?
Yeah, I think that it starts one with the product for all the reasons we talked about, like if you don't have a good product or solution, you're not, it's those reviews, that advocacy is really what's going to help for those small businesses. It is impossible if you're trying to sell to small businesses to take that enterprise marketing approach and call up each one of them. And so you really have to have that strong advocacy. And so, be a good partner to the organization, to try to find ways to be lean as a marketing organization so those dollars can go into the product, which is ultimately what's going to allow for that marketing success. So I try to take pause every time we're thinking about a program and say, hey, is this really going to make a difference? Because if not, what if this could be an extra feature that every customer is going to be delighted about, that's going to then help me sell more? Because that advocacy, word of mouth, becomes so much more important in that SMB view. The other thing is, so we have been very successful in selling internationally. We, as I mentioned, sell into 170 countries. And if you don't have, that doesn't, if you're like, oh, I don't know if that's a lot or not, that's more countries than McDonald's is in. But what that takes is we have a free trial online. We try to be very clear with our messaging. We have not tried, the product is in more languages than the marketing, because when we try not to be like sloppy in that and just try to get everything out there, but try to, when we are doing something, be clear and make sure we can translate it well. It is, and then I think, marketing spends a lot of our time helping with the education and resources for our customers once they join, so that they stay. And with customers that are SMB and buying online, they're not going to come and spend a week with you. There's not somebody dedicated in the company to learning your tool or your product. And so making sure that they can learn quickly, they can ask for help in the solution, and that you're when they can't, you're connecting those dots for them, I think is and that may not all seem like marketing, but if you want to be successful in selling to SMBs, that's your job as a marketer to understand, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, as we were talking about earlier, I mean, you sit as a CMO, you sit in that somewhat precarious position between your organization and the customer. You are the advocate of both, and you have to kind of play to both. What are great lessons to share? First of all, what are some of the personal lessons that have really come clear to you over the last 4 months as we've lived through this?
So one, separate from COVID, just I remember as I was getting ready to join the ActiveCampaign team, I joined one of those in-person sessions that I mentioned, and I got to sit with some of our customers. And I think not confusing SMB with like the word small with thinking of like the companies as simple. Some of our customers are doing, I talked to one customer who is handling hazardous waste, and they've got a training arm and they're removing hazardous waste. Like, I can't think of a more complex company, and then realizing like my tool has to be simple for them to spend their time in that complex job. Another company that was a wood manufacturer, but they're selling their raw materials, they're selling it as furniture, they're selling, and you realize like the complexity in these businesses. Small business does not mean simple, and so you have to come at it from the right frame, I think. And that then helped us as we got into COVID. I think then all the things we talked about, just sticking to what we do well, trying to be clear and concise, and then that prioritization, and then like really trying to pay attention to what we're doing wrong, and trying to redirect that into right is all of that. I know sounds like very basic, or maybe just like a general thought leadership, but it's working for us.
No, that's great. Let me ask you a tough one as we wrap up. You have said, in your career very much demonstrates your advocacy for diversity and inclusion. What's how has your motivation changed over the last few months? And I imagine it's gotten deeper, but we're two white people. Let's call it what it is. We're two white people talking about diversity and inclusion. How do you think you can be more effective as a leader to really drive diversity and inclusion?
I think first, I think thought I had like a little bit of a leg up being a woman, but I learned very quickly that just being somebody that may have some diversity, and I think this applies lots of different ways, doesn't mean that you understand all diversity. The more diversity that you can bring outside of even your own will add value to the company in so many ways. So it is worth your time. But in expanding diversity, doing what we think of as like value add instead of like a culture add instead of culture match, right? Is realizing that you're not going to be an expert in it, and you're going to need help, and you can't do it alone. I think it takes an organization and outside resources and help and ongoing education. And so and then I once heard Michelle Obama speak, and she said something so simple but so profound that sits with me all the time when I maybe get a little bit cocky about like creating success in this area on my own. And it is that diversity begets diversity. So you can't have diversity unless you have diversity. And so you have to get a lot of voices in the room that are different from your own, and allow them to then help bring more diversity. And so I think there's a lot that as a leader I want to champion and be there for. I think that even though I've learned so much in the last few months, I've recognized that if I could learn that much, there's way more to go. And so trying to use others to help me with my blind spots. And then, I think there's some really bright, there's some heavy things that we're realizing that, hey, we made some big missteps, whether it's, you think about tech or a country or as a white person, there's a lot to do, but there's also right now being some big wins. I am so encouraged about this digital transformation, helping people with diversity in mobility and handicaps, where now things are becoming more accessible. And so while we feel we need to work a lot in some areas of diversity, I am so happy about the huge progress we're making because of the pandemic in some areas, especially as it comes to like just making these jobs and making technology more accessible, because not everybody can sit in a major city or can even get out of their house. And so I'm excited about what's happening in diversity in those areas as well.
That's terrific. I just heard a quick story the other day that particularly people who are challenged with their mobility, how curbside pickup has made a world of difference. It's literally opened the world to them, of being able to eat at restaurants that heretofore they couldn't really do on a frequent basis. This is remarkable.
And you think, well, maybe like how many people is that? How many people need that? But then you think about elderly and how many, the aging population that we have. You think about moms that can't get out because they can't leave their two kids, right? Like it's really a lot of opportunity there. And I feel encouraged that if technology, where I spend my time and you spend your time, and so many of the small businesses spend their time, can help with things like mobility and accessibility that way, think about what we could do in other areas of diversity if we work together at it.
This has been so terrific. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking time on a Friday afternoon to do this. It's been a real pleasure to hear your wisdom, and I know you guys are pretty active, no pun intended, in working with partners and seeking partners. And are you okay with some of our viewers who are probably from other Beat SMB brands reaching out and saying, hey, I really want to learn more about your market and your customers and how we might work together? Are you open to that?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me in any social channel. I am the only Maria Pergolino in the world right now, so you should be able to find me. LinkedIn's an easy one, or it's my first initial last name with no dot at activecampaign.com. So please feel free to reach out.
That's terrific. Thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.